Hello friends, in this video we're going to look at idioms and expressions in American English that come from the idea that life is a journey in a motor vehicle. So I call it planes, trains, and automobiles because we'll be looking at some idioms and expressions that come from airplanes, trains, and cars. In another lesson, we looked at some basic idioms and expressions that come from the idea that life is a journey, which was it's a very basic metaphor that gets used in most cultures to make idioms and expressions. And then in another lesson, we built on that idea by looking at specific idioms and expressions that come from seafaring or being in a boat or on the water, which are very common in English, but not necessarily in other languages. And then in another lesson, we built on the idea of the journey by looking at a specific kind of journey in American history, and that's the pioneering journey. So there are a lot of idioms and expressions in American English that come from horses, wagons, and trails. So in this lesson, we're going to be looking at idioms and expressions that come from planes, trains, and cars. We even have a movie called Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, because these machines are an important part of American history and culture. They represent different kinds of ideas, and you'll see there's a lot of similar expressions that we use for each one, and we'll look at those in this lesson. So the first thing we're going to look at are trains and the expressions we get from trains. So trains are an important part of American history and culture because it was by and through trains that the American government and the American people were able to cross the entire continent of North America and build many cities, because you're able to move a lot of things and people very quickly using trains. They're very powerful. So trains are very common in the idioms and expressions that we use in America. So when they were building the cities across America, there were some specific rail lines that they used to go from east to west. There was actually a competition where some companies were building a train line coming from the East Coast, trying to go to the West Coast, and there was another company going from the West Coast to the East Coast, and they were supposed to meet in the middle, and they were going to see who got there first, right? Now, when they were finished, this completed what they called the Transcontinental Railroad across the entire continent. And once this railroad was built, people were able to travel from New York to San Francisco in one rail line, which was a pretty important part of American history. And if you ever watch Western movies in English, you'll see that in these movies, trains are an important part of every one of the stories. So the first expression we look at here is train of thought. So train of thought is an expression that means a series of connected thoughts. For example, when the student came in late and interrupted class, the teacher lost his train of thought and had to start over with what he was saying. So the idea behind this expression is that a train is a series of connected cars. All of these cars are connected together. So this is a train, and the only reason that these cars can move is because everything is connected. So a train of thought is a series of connected thoughts or ideas. And if for some reason it's interrupted, it's hard to get back and remember what you were saying before. So it's important not to interrupt somebody's train of thought, because if you, for example, break these cars apart, then you break the train, then these cars can't go anywhere, right? They get stuck. Only these ones are going forward. So the train of thought is a series of connected thoughts or ideas. To get on track, stay on track, or be on track means that something is progressing or developing as planned, scheduled, or expected. This gets used a lot with projects. So the only reason the train can move forward is because it is on the track. So it has to be on the track in order for the train to move. If you take this train off of the track and put it in the dirt, it's not going to go anywhere. So when something is on track, that means it's going as planned or scheduled. Everything's working correctly. For example, we don't have a lot of time left to finish this project, so we've got to stay on track if we want to finish on time. The opposite of this is to get, stay, be, or go off track. So we can get off track, stay off track, be off track, or go off track. And the meaning of this one is to be in a direction not related or relevant to the thing being discussed. So let's say you're in a train and the train is supposed to go forward this way, but for some reason the driver takes the train over here. Then you are off track because this is the track you want to be on. So to be off track is to be talking about something or thinking about something that's not related to what you're supposed to be focused on. For example, in the middle of a math lesson, the teacher went off track and started talking about his last vacation. So a vacation has nothing to do with math. So if a math teacher is talking about vacation, then that math teacher is off track. To be on the right track is to be doing something in a way that will bring good results, doing something correctly or well. For example, you haven't quite got the answer yet, but you're on the right track. So somebody will say this if you're doing something correctly, but you're not completed with it yet. You haven't finished it yet. You're on the right track. So if you're trying to think of an answer or trying to complete a project and you're doing a good job, but you're not finished yet, somebody will say to you, you're on the right track. So this one's a little bit different than staying or being on track. This just means that things are going as planned or scheduled. Being on the right track means you're doing things correctly. To be on the fast track to something or to fast track something is the quickest but usually the most competitive route to success or improvement, or to put something on the quickest route to success or completion. So the key words here are fast track. So to be on the fast track is describing a situation. To fast track something, this is a verb. You can fast track a project, for example. And this just means you're trying to get something done quickly. For example, many authors sell books that promise to put their readers on the fast track to wealth and prosperity. So it's the way that's going to help you to get something done most quickly. That's the fast track. For example, with COVID, COVID spread in the United States starting in, I think, February and March of 2020. And so all of these companies, these medical companies, were trying to fast track a vaccine for COVID. And so they did some things. They were trying to compete with each other because there were different companies that were trying to develop it first. But they were just trying to find the fastest way that they could make the vaccine for COVID. So they tried to fast track it. To come off the rails or to go off the rails can have a couple of different meanings. The first meaning is to go into a state of chaos, dysfunction, or disorder. For example, our project has started going off the rails ever since the manager up and quit last month. So the project is going off the rails. And so this first meaning is when a project or an organization becomes chaotic or dysfunctional or disordered. There's a problem with it. So we can see over here this train came off the rails. It's no longer on the rails. And so this train is it's probably okay. It needs to be fixed a little bit, but it's not going anywhere because there's some problem with it. So it's off the rails. The second meaning of to come or go off the rails is related to an individual person. It means to become crazy, eccentric, or mentally unhinged, to begin acting in an uncontrollable, inappropriate, and or socially unacceptable manner. So it basically means that somebody's starting to act crazy or strange, like their life is going out of control. They've come off the rails. So the first one here, coming off the rails, is more about a project or an organization. The second one here is about an individual and their life, a person in their life. For example, my youngest son started going off the rails shortly after getting into drugs in high school. So he started going off the rails. My son, well, this isn't true. This is an example, but so his life is going off track or off the rails. A train wreck is similar to going off the rails, but it's worse. So a train wreck means something is failing completely or going extremely badly. For example, their marriage was a train wreck. They started fighting on the honeymoon and never stopped until they got divorced. So we can see here in the picture, this is a real train wreck. Something happened to this train, and so it's all crashed and bunched up. Probably some people got injured from this. I don't know. So we can call this a train wreck. Now, if somebody's life has some bad part of it, like their life is just going really, really badly, and it's affecting them badly, we can call that a train wreck. So it's similar to coming off the rails, but it's worse than that. This is when it starts happening to come or go off the rails. This is the end result of it. It's really, really bad. So a person's life can be a train wreck, or a project that you do can be a train wreck if it goes really badly. If you give a presentation and it doesn't go well, we can call it a train wreck. Any kind of situation that just goes really, really badly can be a train wreck. To say that you're in it for the long haul or in the long haul, it means you're determined to continue with something until it's finished, or to do something over a long period of time. For example, if you really want to stay healthy and fit, you've got to be in it for the long haul. The idea here is two things, the long and haul. To haul something means to carry it or to pull it. So hauling is carrying or pulling something. Long, we're talking about a long time, a long period of time. So to say something for the long haul, it means doing hard work for a long time. Literally, that's what it means. And it's coming from, like, if you look at the train here, this train probably has a long journey, and it's pulling all of these cars here. So it's got a long haul ahead of it. The end of the line is the point at which it is no longer possible to continue with a process or activity, and it has the same meaning as the end of the road. So a train track, a specific train track, can also be called a line. So there's specific lines that they're on. So to say you're at the end of the line means that you can't go any farther on that train track. So the expression to be at the end of the line means you can't continue doing something. For example, 2020 was the end of the line for President Trump, since he didn't win re-election. So he's not president anymore. So we can say that was the end of the line for him, imagining that his presidential term was like a train and the track that he was on. So it was the end of the line. To say full steam ahead means to do something with all your energy and enthusiasm. So with trains, we get a lot of steam expressions because the older trains were steam trains, and steam is the gas that's created when water is boiling. So we can see here in the picture all of this steam coming out of the train because the engine is working hard. So steam is the fuel or the power for the train. It's not really the fuel. It's what's giving it power. So they're steam-powered trains. So to say that something is full steam ahead means you're doing it with all your energy. So the energy here, because we're using a train, we're talking about steam. For example, she went full steam ahead on her assignment so she could finish on time. So if you're doing anything with all of your energy, or if you're very enthusiastic, very excited for it, you can say it's full steam ahead. To let off steam or blow off steam is to do something that helps you to get rid of strong feelings or energy. You can do or say something that helps you get rid of strong feelings or energy. For example, he lifts weights after work to let off steam. So if we look at the picture here, we can see this train is letting off steam or blowing off steam, because the steam in a train, it creates pressure. And if there's too much pressure, the engine will explode. So we want some pressure, but we don't want too much pressure. So you can imagine that you, as a person, you have a lot of pressure inside you, or stress. And if it builds up too much, then you could explode. And we actually say that if somebody loses their temper, if they start yelling, banging on things, or hitting things, we say they lose their temper. It's because they have too much pressure, too much stress built up. Now, if you do something to help you to relieve that stress or relieve that pressure, we call it blowing off steam or letting off steam. So a lot of people exercise to help let off steam or blow off steam. So they're just trying to get rid of extra energy or strong feelings or bad feelings by usually doing something physical. To lose steam, this is a little bit different. Right? Blowing off steam is when you're doing it on purpose to get rid of some extra energy. To lose steam is when you start to lose strength, force, or energy, or you start slowing down. For example, after studying for 4 hours straight, John started to lose steam, so he took a break. So he started to lose steam. This just means when you're running out of energy. So if you lose steam, you're running out of energy to do something. It's usually when you're tired, right? You can say, I'm losing steam. Because if the train starts to lose steam, then the train will start to slow down and eventually stop. And then we can say that the train is out of steam, or it's run out of steam, or it is out of steam. So if a train is out of steam, that means it has no more energy to go forward. It is stopped. So the expression to run out of steam or to be out of steam means to lose one's energy, motivation, or enthusiasm to continue doing something. It's the same as to run out of gas, which is one that we'll look at when we look at cars. So you can run out of steam or run out of gas. They mean basically the same thing. You're just out of energy. You have no more energy. For example, after spending hours working on this project, I'm running out of steam. Can we take a break? Now let's look at cars. So cars are another important part of American culture and history. For example, there's a lot of popular car movies, the Fast and the Furious movies and other ones like that. So cars are a big part of the culture. Now cars, they're another kind of transportation, but the thing about cars is that they're more free. They give you freedom because if you're on a train, you can only go on the track and you have no control over where the train is going. You just get on the train. But with a car, it's like you have more freedom and more control. So the idioms and expressions with cars kind of come from the idea of freedom or control over your own life, independence. So cars were a part of American history, like the railroad went all the way across America and connected the East Coast and West Coast. There were highways also, highways for cars that connected the east side of the United States with the west side. And so there, for example, there was a very famous road called Route 66 that went from the Midwest all the way out to Los Angeles, to Hollywood, right? Because Los Angeles and Hollywood, this is where people would chase their dreams. So they're looking for their dreams. So they would get on Route 66 and take a road trip. So the road trip is a big part of American culture. Even today, Americans love to get in their cars and go on road trips, especially in the summertime, just travel across the states. So the first expression here with cars is to hit the road. To hit the road just means to leave a place or begin a trip. So it's kind of like the same as head out. And we looked at that expression with the boat expressions. So to head out, we say hit the road with cars. To leave a place or begin a trip. For example, I'd love to stay longer, but it's really time to hit the road. So it's time to hit the road means it's time to leave. I'm not sure why we're hitting the road, but sometimes people say I have to get on the road. But the idea is that you're in a car. To say that somebody is middle of the road means that they're neither left wing nor right wing and not at all extreme. They are ordinary or unexciting. So we can look here in the picture. We've got these lanes. So each of these parts of the road is called a lane. So this is the right lane, this is the center lane, and this is the left lane. Now, if you're driving on the road, slower people should be driving on the right side, faster people should be driving on the left side, and then there's the people in the middle who are just kind of going at a normal pace. So to say that somebody's middle of the road means that they're not extreme in any way. They're just kind of like normal average people. For example, he's a pretty middle of the road guy, so he gets along with both Republicans and Democrats. So it doesn't only work for politics. It works for any kind of a situation where there are extreme sides to the situation. If somebody's just normal or average, we can say that they are middle of the road. To live life in the fast lane, or life in the fast lane, can have a couple of meanings. First, in a very successful position or on the path to a successful outcome. if you're in this position, then you're in the fast lane, or you have a life in the fast lane. So you're on the path to success or to a successful outcome. For example, when Apple developed the iPod and the iPhone, it really put them in the fast lane in the tech industry. So I put Apple, the company, in the fast lane, because before that, Apple wasn't a super big company. It was popular with some people, but it wasn't as big as it is now. But once they developed the iPod and the iPhone, then all of a sudden everybody started buying Apple products. So their company value went up very quickly. And so their company was in the fast lane, meaning their company was making fast progress with money and power. The other meaning of life in the fast lane is kind of a negative one. It means engaging in energetic, pleasure-driven, and often risky behavior. So this one means that somebody is being too risky or doing something not very wise, usually because they are looking for pleasure or happiness or fun. For example, he always lived his life in the fast lane, and he ended up dying at a very young age, which this could be said for a lot of actors and actresses and musicians. Because if you think about actors and actresses and musicians, we say they live fast lives because they work hard and then they party hard, and usually they get into drugs and alcohol and all kinds of pleasure-driven behavior and risky behavior. They're doing things that are not very wise, and often they die young or they have problems later on. So we say that's a fast life. It's like they're living all of their experience very quickly. To be on a rocky or a bumpy road means to have a difficult time with many problems. For example, he knew he had a long, rocky road ahead of him if he wanted to become a doctor. And if we look at the picture here, we can see this road is a very, very bumpy road. If there's rocks here, we could say that it's a rocky road. It's the idea that, when you're living your life and you have some problems for a long time, then you're on a rocky road or a bumpy road, because the rocks and the bumps are like the problems that you're experiencing. But to be on a road like that means you have many problems, because you can see if you tried to drive on this, it's not just one bump, it's a lot of bumps. So that meaning you'd have a lot of problems. So the rocky road means to have a lot of difficult times or difficult problems in life. Similar to this, but not as bad, is to hit a bump in the road. So a bump is anything that's sticking up out of the road. If you hit a bump in the road, it's a problem that arises and interferes with forward progress, usually only temporarily. So you can see there's a bump here on this road, and there's actually even writing on the road that tells you there's a bump. But there's only one bump. So this might slow you down, but it only slows you down for a short time. Whereas on this one, this is going to slow you down for a long time. You might not even want to continue on. But this one is only a short thing. So to say that there's a bump in the road or you hit a bump in the road, it just means that you had like one problem. And it's usually a small problem, not a big problem. Whereas this is problems for a long time. To shift gears, as an expression, it means to suddenly change what you're doing. For example, the first half is a comedy, but then the movie shifts gears. So the idea here is that in a manual transmission car, you've got this stick shift. Now, most people in America drive automatic cars, so you don't see anything like this really. But if you've ever driven in a manual transmission car or been in one, you've seen a stick shift like this. So you use this to shift to the different gears in the car. So like the first gear is when you're first starting and you're driving slowly. And then as you go a little bit faster, you go to second gear, then third gear, then fourth gear, then fifth gear. Usually fifth is the highest. Sometimes there's sixth though. So to shift gears, basically in a car, it means to change speeds. So you're starting to go faster or slower. Now, when we use this as an expression, it means to change what you're doing, usually suddenly, to change what you're doing. So here in the example, they're talking about like a movie. They're saying the first half of the movie is a comedy. It's funny, but then the movie shifts gears. Maybe it becomes more serious, right? So let's say if you're in a class and the teacher is talking about one thing, and then they very quickly start talking about something different. They might say, I'm going to shift gears here. So they're just going to start talking about something differently. So shifting gears is just changing what you're doing, usually very quickly or suddenly. Similar to this is to shift into high gear or to kick into high gear. So in a car like this, usually fifth gear or sixth gear is the highest one. So that's the fastest speeds you can go. You can't go any faster. So to shift or kick into high gear means you're trying to do something as fast as you can or with as much energy as possible. For example, we've got a lot of work to do to finish this week, so we're going to have to kick it into high gear if we want to get it all done on time. So to kick into high gear here means to start doing something faster or with a lot of energy into high gear. Opposite of this is to put the brakes on something or to put the brakes on someone. And it means to slow or stop progress of something or someone. Because if you're driving a car, you press the brakes to make you slow down or stop, right? So if you're putting the brakes on something, that means you're just stopping doing it or stopping the progress of it. For example, raising taxes now would put the brakes on economic recovery. So it would stop or slow down economic recovery. So you might hear this if there's a group of people doing something or an organization and they want to stop what they're doing. They'll say, let's put the brakes on this. To be or to run out of gas is to lose one's energy, motivation, or enthusiasm to continue doing something. So this is like running out of steam. To run out of steam or to run out of gas mean the same thing. We're just talking about a different kind of fuel. So in a car, we use gas, and then in an old kind of train, we would use steam. But to be out of gas or to be out of steam just means to lose all of your energy. For example, after spending hours working on this project, I'm running out of gas. Can we take a break? To hit a roadblock or to run into a roadblock is to have anything happen that stops your progress. Anything that stops your progress. For example, I've run into several roadblocks on my way to finishing college, from losing my job to having to change my major. So a roadblock is something that is stopping you from making progress. Now, it could stop you temporarily or it could stop you completely. So here, like if you're going to college and then you lose your job, some people might give up college in order to find a different job. Or they might find it hard to find a job when they're going to college. Now, it could stop you completely, or you could just stop for a moment and then continue doing what you were doing before. So like here, we can see the sign. This is a literal roadblock, right? So you can see it's blocking the road. But you can always go around this. You shouldn't, but you can. So it's there to stop you, but it can't stop you completely all the time. To come to a dead end or to hit a dead end is a situation that has no hope of making progress. So a roadblock might be temporary, whereas a dead end is permanent. That means you can't go anywhere else. So a dead end is kind of like the end of the line, but for cars. So you can see here the sign, the dead end. This road, it stops there because there's a wall. So there's no way you're going around that wall in a car. So a dead end is any situation that has no hope of making progress. For example, this is a dead end job. I've got to find a new one if I want to get anywhere in life. So you'll hear this expression dead end a lot with jobs and relationships. So if you're dating somebody and you don't ever see that you're going to get married, you can say this is a dead end relationship. It's not going anywhere. And then last, let's look at planes and the expressions that come from planes. So this is just a few expressions that come from planes. So again, planes are a big part of American culture because the first successful planes were flown in the United States. So this is the Wright brothers. They were the first ones to have a successful plane flight back in, I think, 1903 or sometime around there. And so ever since then, planes have been in the American imagination. So planes are kind of like cars, but they're a little bit riskier. So we'll see a lot of expressions that get used kind of the same for planes and trains and cars. For example, to take off. So to take off means to leave, and it's the same as like heading out or hitting the road. It just means to leave, usually quickly. For example, well, I've got to get up early for work, so I'm going to take off now. So if you're going to leave somewhere, you can say, I'm going to take off, I'm going to head out, or I'm going to hit the road. All of these mean basically the same thing. But this is only one meaning of takeoff. Another meaning of takeoff we use usually for careers, somebody's career. So it means to suddenly become popular or successful. For example, Beyonce's career really took off after she was in Destiny's Child. So here we're talking about her career, and it took off because when a plane takes off, it goes down the runway, and then it very quickly goes high up in the sky. So the idea here is that going up in the sky is like being successful, right? And it happens very quickly. So to suddenly become very popular or successful, it took off. We could use this for somebody's career. We could use it for a business or anything like that. To fly under the radar is to go without being noticed, detected, or addressed. For example, Tim managed to fly under the radar the whole semester, so the teacher never made him answer any questions in class. So the idea here is that different airports use radar to track airplanes in the sky. So you can see this guy here, he's looking at a radar. This is the radar. So it's some kind of a radio tower and computer that lets you keep track of all of the airplanes that are in a sky. Now, the thing about a radar is that if you're too low to the ground, then the radar will not be able to see you. So we call that flying under the radar, because the radar is looking at the sky, but if you're flying too low, then the radar will not see you. So that's flying under the radar. So we can use this expression to fly under the radar when somebody or something doesn't get noticed or detected or talked to, right? So here, this student, let's say you have a student come to a class for a whole semester and the teacher never even learns their name, never calls on them, they never talk in class. Like if they never showed up to class, the teacher would never know. The teacher never paid attention to them. We could say that they flew under the radar because the teacher didn't see them or notice them. To take a nosedive or to make a nosedive or to nosedive is to go down sharply and quickly in value, quality, or number. For example, Chad's grades took a nosedive after he stopped coming to class. So here you can see this airplane. The front of the airplane we call the nose because it looks like a nose on a face, right? So this is the nose. So if something is in a nose dive, that means it's going down very quickly. It's going down very quickly. So if something takes or makes or has a nosedive, that means it goes down sharply, quickly in value or number. So this gets used with numbers usually to take a nosedive. If you experience turbulence, that means you're in a situation in which there's a lot of sudden change, confusion, disagreement, and sometimes violence. So turbulence is similar to being on a rocky road, or if you watched the video on the idioms and expressions from being in a boat, there was one called being in rough waters or rough seas. So these are all the same idea. In a plane, we call it turbulence. On a road with a car, we call it a rocky or a bumpy road. And then on a boat, we call it rough waters or rough seas. But it just means you're going through a lot of problems. Sudden change, confusion, disagreement, sometimes violence, turbulent. For example, America has had quite a bit of political turbulence over the past 2 years. So turbulence, again, this comes from planes. If you've ever been on a plane, which you probably have, if you're listening to this, then when you're on the plane and the plane starts to shake a lot, they call that turbulence, right? So in life, we can say that if you're in a rough or a bad situation, that you're experiencing a turbulent situation. To fly blind is to do something by guessing, feeling, or instinct. So you can see here this plane, if they're just flying by looking with their eyes, then they're not going to be able to see anything. They're flying blind. So we use this whenever somebody's doing something by guessing or feeling or by instinct. For example, there are no instructions for how to be a good parent. So most of the time I feel like I'm flying blind, and I hope that everything will turn out okay. So I can't see where I'm going. I'm flying like I'm blind because I can't see. So any situation where you really don't know what you're doing, you're just kind of guessing or feeling your way through it or using your instincts, you can call that flying blind. Sometimes it ends up okay. Sometimes it ends up very badly. And if it ends up very badly, then you crash and burn. So to crash and burn means to fail very suddenly, obviously, and completely. For example, the company crashed and burned after only 2 years in business. So when a plane runs into the ground, we call it crashing. And usually when that happens, there will be a fire because of the fuel that's in the plane, the gas that's in the plane. So it'll crash and then burn. Very, very bad. So this is a lot like being a train wreck. So something can be a train wreck or it can crash and burn if it ends very badly and very suddenly. So that's it for the expressions from this metaphor. Life is a journey in a motor vehicle. Thanks for watching.